I will get cooking. So welcome, everybody. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of Programs and Services. Today is Wednesday, April 19th. And I am Brenda Noel, the vice chair of this committee, turning off the ringer on my phone. And let's see who's in the room. We have from Ward 2, President Albright. We have from Ward 5, Councillor Humphrey. And we have from Ward 8, Councillor Ryan. And we have from a special guest, Ward 6 is Councillor Danberg. And from Ward 3, we have Councillor Malachy. And who else? Did I see anybody else from the City Council? I don't think I have. So let me just talk a little bit about how tonight's going to go, because we're having a public hearing on sustainable containers. And also at the end of this agenda, we've got the tree ordinance to refine. So my plan is, if we are done everything but the tree ordinance by like 8:45, we'll break into the tree ordinance. If it goes beyond that, we are going to hold the tree ordinance for another night. That's the plan. Bear with me, because I'm a little rusty at this, so we're going to kick it right through. Let's start with the first item. I also want to introduce our clerk, Jacqueline, who's with us tonight. So our first item, we've got John Doyle here tonight to present this, and it's item number 117-23, recommendation to approve the 2023 preliminary election date. The Newton Election Commissioners recommending the City Council approve the date of Tuesday, September 12th, 2023 as a date for the 2023 preliminary election if needed. And Mr. Doyle, you want to jump in on this?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you to the rest of the committee as well. So yeah, September 12th, 2023 is the day that we have identified as a good candidate for the September preliminaries for the municipal election. So I'll just, there were three possible dates that we could have, or that we identified as possibly viable. The 12th is the most viable, but I'll run through the others to show you kind of our quick process. So September 5th is Tuesday, September 5th. We do not feel that is a good day to choose because it's the day after Labor Day. Choosing the day after Labor Day limits us in terms of resources. An election is a collaboration with some other city departments such as DPW and the print shop, and when they have 3 or 4 day weekends, that makes it a little tough for us. And it also limits us in terms of preparation as well. So we don't feel that date would be a good one to choose. The case against September 19th, which is 2 weeks after the 5th, we feel if we do the election on that day, it won't give us enough time to prepare for the November 7th city election. So September 12th, we feel is the best viable option. It's not after holiday weekend. There's enough time between that day and November 7th for us to do all the preparation and clean up and finalize the preliminary elections. It is also noteworthy that, it should be noted that the Election Commission voted unanimously to recommend September 12th as the date as well at the last meeting of the Election Commission. So yeah, we feel that September 12th would be the ideal day. And if anyone has any questions, I would be more than happy to answer.
Excellent. Before we open it up, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Wright has joined us from Ward 3. And now I'll open it up for any questions. Okay. Is there a motion to move this item forward?
Move approval.
President Albright had her hand up. So that's okay. You're on mute though.
That's fine. Councillor Humphrey can move approval.
Excellent. Okay, Councillor Humphrey has moved approval. All in favor, should we do the hands, Jacqueline? What do you prefer?
Voice vote would be fine.
Voice vote is fine. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Doyle, for joining us. And we will move on to the next item. So I want to acknowledge Councillor Greenberg from Ward 1 has joined us. And we've got a couple of folks here from the city that I want to acknowledge. One is Juanita Trabert, who is the Director of Sustainable Materials Management. We also have the CEO, Jonathan Yo, here tonight. Counselor Norton has joined us from Ward 2. Anybody else I should acknowledge before we launch into this? Okay, so this is a public hearing. Let me read it into the record. Item number 66-23, discussion and possible amendment to section 12-72. Counselors Danberg, Leary, Greenberg, Albright, Norton, Kelly, Malicki, Wright, Markowitz, Crosley, Downs, Noel, Bowman, Ryan, Kalis, Lipoff, Oliver, Humphrey, and Lucas, requesting a discussion and possible amendment to section 12-72 sustainable containers, packaging, and single-use ordinance to further reduce the amount of single-use plastic in Newton. So I want to start by having Counselor Danberg, who is the lead docketer on this, launch this and introduce her speaker, and then we'll open it up to see if the city, folks representing the city want to respond, and then we'll open it up for public comments. So Counselor Danberg, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Noel. We discussed this 2 weeks ago. We have been working on this with the Plastics Reduction Working Group, a very hard working group. We have reached out to survey all of the licensed food establishments in the city. It was a little over 400, and we received 89 responses. The overwhelming comment was that everyone understands the importance of attempting to reduce plastics, but that they need time to comply. The two main items are water bottles, plastic single-use water bottles. Americans use 50 billion single-service plastic water bottles a year. Most end up in oceans and landfills, and there are billions of new plastic water bottles manufactured from virgin materials every year, because last year only 5% of plastic waste consumed in the US was recycled. The other main item is black plastic. Black plastic is not recyclable, as I'm sure many, if not most of you know. It cannot be read by optic readers. And an important factor about black plastic is that it is black because it's made from mostly recycled electronic components laced with heavy metals like cadmium. They leach into the foods that they contain, especially if the foods are warm. So I'm going to turn it over now to Alan Gordon, who and Sunwoo Kong will speak after Alan. Alan, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Councillor Danberg, and thank you, Councillor Noel, and the rest of the committee for inviting me to speak. As Councillor Danberg mentioned, we met a few weeks ago and reviewed an initial proposed draft of the ordinance. We heard some of the comments from the committee and the city councilors, from Greg Riebman, and what we have provided for consideration is an updated draft of the ordinance. And if I can share my screen, hold on. I have, can everyone see that now?
Yes.
So what I want to, I realize there are a number of people on the call today that were not at the last meeting, but I want to highlight both what's in this ordinance overall, and then in yellow, I'm highlighting really what we've changed from the last version that was reviewed at the last Programs and Services meeting. So what I've done is I've skipped down into the main section. The definitions are important and everyone should review those. In the interest of time, I'm not going to run through and read every definition in the ordinance. So really the first item I want to point out is there seemed to be, when we spoke last time, some kind of back and forth confusion and discussion around what is currently in effect in the 12.72 ordinance that was went into effect on January 1, 2020. So I have added in a section here, these items EI 1 through 4 are word for word what's currently into effect. So I've just added that in there for reference purposes. It doesn't change, there's nothing changing there. But again, in January 2020, the city banned dispensing food or beverages in foam polystyrene. The food prohibited plastic serves. The city prohibited plastic serves, apologies, encouraged reusable food serviceware, and also prohibited retail establishments from selling foam polystyrene. And from retail establishments from selling foam polystyrene packing material as well. So one of the key things we heard in the last meeting was to consider certain items that could take effect quite quickly and that were not necessarily as controversial or that needed more time to go into effect. So what I've done here is I've split this into 3 sections of items that can take effect on September 1, that we're proposing can take effect on September 1. Below this, we'll get to items that can take effect on January 1, 2024, and then a couple items that can take effect July 1, 2024. Other than what I've highlighted in yellow, the unhighlighted items are the same as in the last proposed draft that you saw a few weeks ago. So first, a number of single-use items. I've added plastic splash sticks, which this was at the suggestion of Councilor Leary, who I didn't see here today, but that was her suggestion, so I've added that in. The item on helium balloons didn't change since the last proposal. So item number 3, so here I just want to point this out. So when we spoke last time, we spoke about the fact that about 24 municipalities around Massachusetts have banned single-use plastic water bottles. Some of them have what are known as municipal bans. The city or town that they're in cannot purchase and distribute single-use water bottles, and some have retail bans. So we've split this into 2 parts here. The first part is a municipal ban, which we're proposing would take effect September 1. And later, lower down, we'll see the retail ban. So item 3 is new because it is specifically a municipal ban on purchase and distribution of single-use water bottles. Item 4 is really the same, but we added a clarification. The main point here is that retail establishments, and below, taking effect later, is food establishments, are prohibited from selling or distributing disposable food serviceware that is not reusable, compostable, or recyclable. That's the main point. We were trying to clarify what types of containers that and food serviceware is encompassed by that. And previously, we had only including black plastic and foam polystyrene. We wanted to also make it clear we are talking about paper-based containers that are lined with petroleum-based plastic. So that's the change there. Item 5 hasn't changed. That's packing material. Then to give, based on some of what we heard from Mr. Reedman, we felt that food establishments really needed more time. Previously, we had this taking effect July 1. Needed more time to ensure that they had supply chain access to food serviceware that is not reusable, that is reusable, I apologize, compostable or recyclable. So we've pushed this out to take effect January 1, 2024. The same clarification on paper-based containers lined with petroleum-based plastic. Item number 2, we put this out to January 1, 2024. This didn't seem that controversial to Mr. Reedman. but we just put this in with the other food establishment item. There was a little bit of text. I don't have the text here, but Mr. Rubin pointed out was a bit confusing about compostable utensils. And that has just been removed. We wanted to clarify specific to straws, even for dine-in customers, that food establishments may only provide straws to customers upon request. The item on condiment packages and takeout orders hasn't changed. Food establishments may only provide condiment packages upon request. We have also added, and we've discussed, Councilor Danberg discussed with the schools. I think someone from the schools may be here to speak tonight as well about this. They're probably would be most impacted by this, I think, but add a municipal ban on distributing prepared food or beverages in disposable food serviceware that is not reusable, compostable, or recyclable, utensils that are not reusable, compostable, or recyclable, and single-use condiment packages. And then we've pushed out to July 1, 2024, item number 1, which is the retail ban on single-use plastic water bottles. And then in item 2, for food establishments, for dine-in customers, food establishments utilize only reusable dishware. We previously had a waiver request for establishments that did not have dishwashing capability. We included, Mr. Reedman brought this up, that the waiver could include an inability to hire staff. So we've included that. And we added a reference that if an establishment provides 100% compostable dishware and utensils, and they have a private composting hauler, that they also could request a waiver. To be honest, the only establishment that I know in Newton that would fit that bill right now is Clover, but perhaps more over time. And then just the item about clean takeout containers for customers' own effectively doggy bags so that they would fill themselves. We just have that take effect immediately. So the effective date has changed, but the content of that is the same. And that's really the summary I wanted to give. I wanted to be sure everyone knew where we stood, what was different from the last time we spoke. And again, for those that weren't here for the last time, just to kind of run through somewhat quickly in the interest of time without going line by line through every item. I'm happy to answer questions. Sunwoo and Councilor Danberg has been obviously very involved in this effort as our leader, our fearless leader as well. So thank you, and I'll stop there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I'm going to take some questions from the committee, and I also want to, since we do have some representatives from the administration here, give them an opportunity to respond. But why don't we start with President Albright?
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. A question just for clarity's sake, and mainly for my own clarity's sake. So single-use water bottles, this would apply to supermarkets, I'm assuming, as well? I was in Wegmans the other day and I saw an untold number of people buying big packages of single-use water bottles. And so I'm wondering if supermarkets are aware that, does this apply to them? I guess that's my first question.
The retail ban that would take effect, that we're proposing would take effect July 1, 2024. Yes.
Okay, and does anybody told them? Has anybody talked to the supermarkets about this?
They emailed us this afternoon.
Oh, okay, good.
The
I missed that
retailers.
one.
Yes, I think that there is an organization that represents grocery stores and supermarkets that has been aware of this for some time. But I think they were waiting until we convened again before they made comment. This is something that we thought about very seriously and realized that it would be completely unfair to the small stores, the pizza shops and the convenience stores, if we were to not allow them to have single-use plastic water bottles, but were to allow them in grocery stores. And we checked with Concord and Arlington and these are towns that have this ban in place, and they have the ban also in their supermarkets.
And what about
Grocery stores.
what about single-use juice bottles? Because those are quite popular.
No, single use, we're only dealing with plain tap water. We're not dealing with juice bottles or hint or water that is flavored or soda or Coca-Cola or carbonated water at all, just single-use tap water.
Okay,
Thanks.
Counselor, is that everything, President
Yes,
Albright?
thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Counselor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was a couple questions to Mr. Gordon. You spoke and reviewed this with Greg Riemann, Mr. Riemann. Did he have any concerns of what you presented tonight?
My understanding is that he invited folks from his chamber to come speak, and he was going to leave it to them. So he's not here. I don't want to speak for him, to be
Okay.
honest.
He
But
may
I
be
think
listening in. I spoke to him this afternoon, and he is not in town, but he said he would come and listen in tonight if possible. And the goal tonight, by the way, is not to vote this out. The goal is to move to hold.
Okay. And when you spoke with him, did he have any additional concerns?
No, we had voiced he had voiced his concerns before. We have done all that we can to up to this point, certainly to take care of the concerns that he had. His concern was that, or at least one of his major concerns was that the city needs the restaurants and convenience stores and pizza shops in the city need time in order to get rid of the inventory that they have and to source out other acceptable items.
Counselor
As-
Danberg, I'm going to stop you because it looks like Mr. Riemann has joined us.
Oh,
So I'm
good.
going to ask him to answer the question directly.
That's
Mr.
much better.
Sure, Mr. Riemann.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I actually, to answer Councilor Wright's question, I was not aware of any of these things, except that they were being considered. This is the first time I'm seeing the dates attached to them, the various changes.
Okay. Okay, and we're going to hold it so you can write us a letter if there's anything of concerns in what is proposed tonight.
Thanks.
Okay, and the second question, you mentioned that the schools or the schools talked tonight about them complying to this because.
Yes, the schools are there. There is someone from the schools that is going to speak tonight.
Okay, good, because that is a big issue there. And it would be a nice issue to get them to recycle too. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Ryan.
Okay, I'm going to be brief. I have a couple of questions. I was worried about the school issue too, so that was answered. When you contacted the restaurants, especially the pizza shops and small restaurants like Johnny's Lunch and them, did they mention anything about the added cost, which I think most of us all know it's quite a bit of added costs? And if they were gonna have to pass that on to the consumer, which I would think they would.
Sun Wukong, I think is the best one to speak to this. She's here tonight. She is on our sustainable products group, and she has done considerable research on pricing, and in fact, we included in the packet the pricing that we found. But go ahead, Sunwoo.
Yes, I created a chart that compares items that are being currently used with alternatives that are available on the market. So please take a look. I list the material, the price, and the sourcing. I admit that my sourcing had to be limited to web resources because I didn't have an account to the suppliers. So it is a little bit limited, but it will give you a sense of what the picture is.
And give us a sense of what you found.
So one of the biggest concerns that the chamber had was the black plastic takeout containers. They said that was quite useful for holding hot items and prevented leaks. I have, gotten takeout from, places in Brookline and Newton where they have used white plastic takeout containers that are identical to the black versions. And looking online, the prices are the same. In fact, the last takeout I had was a Chinese restaurant called Cubist Circle in Brookline. And they had the white containers. And when I asked, they said they sourced it from Chinatown and did not have any issues with it. Brookline has had a similar ban in place since 2017. So they've had 5 years to figure out how to source these items. I know that Mr. Riebman has concerns about being able to source white plastic, but it is my belief that with towns like Brookline managing perfectly well, that it is possible to source them. It may just require a change. Let's see. Is there something else, Vicki?
No, I think
No,
that's.
that's good. All right, I have another question. That's good. I mean, I don't think we should be using the black anymore either. And this is someone that was in the restaurant business for years. There is another way for that. So a couple of things with the single-use plastic water bottles. I hope someday we get to the rest of the single-use plastic bottles, but what are we considering in ounces single use? Because I
Yeah,
mean,
so-
they make them in 12, 16, 20.
Go
Right.
ahead, Alan.
The definition is 1 liter or less, which is the definition. Arlington, the most recent municipality to pass a ban, they have 1 liter or less. I didn't show it just because it in the interest of time, but I made a slight tweak to the definition to say, or similarly sized, reasonably considered to be a single serving, what I would buy to drink with my, with a meal type of serving. But 1 liter or less is the core definition that is generally considered single serve, single use. It's not, single use is not how it's defined. If you'd like, I can reshare my screen and show you the definition.
No,
if
that's
helpful.
all right.
Yeah,
I just
okay.
wanted to get an idea of how large the bottles are.
Yeah,
we're
1 liter.
talking about.
Yeah, it's like, gallon jugs of water are still allowed. You could still buy those.
Right,
for-
that's
for
what I
example.
want.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
what I want to clarify.
Yep.
Okay, and the other thing is, which I talked about before, Mr. Gordon, you probably remember the last time was, what are we gonna allow, what are we allowing single-use water containers? Are we allowing aluminum or I hope not like I raised concerns last meeting about the milk carton type containers, which we can't recycle in Newton. Are we
So that's,
sig-
that it's correct that the box, sorry to interrupt, Councilor Ryan, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Didn't mean to interrupt you, I apologize. Absolutely the canned, the canned water bottles, I think I showed this the last time. I mean, this is one
Yeah.
example, are absolutely allowed. I mean, we've done in our research a bunch of searching. I know they are more expensive currently. Certainly, we hope that those prices come down. We know they cost more. The boxed water would not be allowed because, as you noted, they are not recyclable.
Okay, yeah, I actually did some research myself, and it seems that a lot of, it looks like someday down the road, not that far off, we might be looking at more water in aluminum cans, because it seems to be the best thing to recycle that really does get recycled and reused. So that's all I have. Thank you.
If I may just interject a little bit, in 2019, the large companies Coca-Cola and Pepsi had planned to release the 12-ounce cans, the ones that look just like regular soda cans. We haven't really seen them in the stores yet, but they had plans prior to the pandemic. I don't know if it was slowed by the fact that COVID hit, but we're hoping that, in the not too distant future, with plastic bottles becoming less and less popular, that aluminum will become a more popular choice.
Thank you. So I want to acknowledge Councillor Baker from Ward 7 has joined us. And now I'm going to ask Councillor Greenberg to go.
Oh, thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I want to thank everyone's hard work on this important item. Councillor Leary is not here because she's facilitating program public facilities. But she's going to try to join us. A couple questions. Will these restrictions apply to Newton Wellesley Hospital because they are very poor at recycling and use a lot of single-use plastics there? I work there, so I see it.
Anyone in the city of Newton, depending on the date of compliance, will be required to comply. Yes.
So have they been contacted and talked to about this?
I don't remember whether we spoke specifically with Newton Wellesley, but we have a number of places on our list that we still have to contact. I think they're probably on that list.
Oh, that
But
would,
yes, they will have to comply.
okay. Yeah, I think that would be an important group to talk to make them aware. And then what are plastic splash sticks?
Alan, can you
So,
explain
when you go to the coffee shop and they get those little tiny plastic sticks you stick in the hole of the coffee so it doesn't spill when you carry it out. That's what it is.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Great, thank you. Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I don't know if we could put it back up on the screen, the tonight's version of the items, but setting aside the food and beverage related ones, I saw there were a few other items that were up for consideration. And I was just wondering what we're thinking the implications will be in terms of people just switching to buying from Amazon or whatever and having it delivered to their house. Because, I mean, that's not great either, but I don't know how much we can do about it. And I just, I'm thinking I'm going to get some comments about that from some of the residents.
I wish that we could control Amazon, but we cannot do that. Maybe there at some point we'll be able to figure out how we can control things coming into our border, but we right now, if you purchase the ordinance says that you may not purchase or distribute in the city of Newton. And Amazon is located somewhere in the cloud.
Yeah, I'm thinking there were a few of those convenience store type items that I can imagine people will probably just keep buying. And
if you think
mostly
of Waybill,
yeah.
Let me know.
Yeah. All right. Well, just wanted to put that out there as food for thought, I
Great
guess.
question.
Yeah, and then yeah, we had gotten a few emails today from about some of the other specific items on the retail side, not the restaurant side. I wasn't necessarily super persuaded by those. For example, the balloons thing, like, I don't think the issue is just the balloons themselves. I think the helium, like, my understanding is there's a helium crisis and that we're using up helium on frivolous things. So maybe time to move on from that one. And then, yeah, just, you know, we did, as I said earlier, get an email from the Retailers Association of Massachusetts, but I'm not widely impressed by most of their positions on policy across the Commonwealth. So didn't feel a strong need to start taking their suggestions on policy tonight on this one either. So thank you.
Bill, the balloon thing came right from me. And I have a picture that I don't know whether anybody can
No,
see.
We can't see it, Vicky. Maybe you could email
Okay.
it to the chair.
Yeah, I will do that. It's a photograph of the carcass of a beautiful sea turtle with the string of a balloon coming out of its nose, and clearly its death was caused by ingesting what was left of a helium balloon. Any of you that walk the shores know that our rivers and oceans and shores are littered with the detritus of helium balloons, and it's causing havoc with marine life.
I agree. I'm just adding that also, in addition to all of those things with the balloons themselves, that we don't need to be using helium either, because there were some of the emails that suggested that there were workarounds or better balloon options or whatever, and it just didn't
I'm
seem
not going
necessary.
after the helium. I'm going after the balloons. Right now, I'm taking one thing at a time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you,
Thank you.
Madam
Is that
Vice
everything?
Chair. Yes.
Excellent. So I just have, if there are any more counselors who want to comment on this. I just had one comment, piggybacks a little bit on Counselor Humphrey, that when I saw the dental swabs, dental floss and the ear swabs, I do worry, you know, this original item was really about restaurants, and the scope creep concerns me in terms of, you know, it will push more people to the web. And one of the things, if we're going to have this entire item get through the larger city council, it may be more beneficial to have it be very specific in scope. Before we open it up for public comment, are there anybody, does Ms. Traber want to speak, or anyone else, Mr. Yo from the administration? Yes, Ms. Traber.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I have a couple of things that through discussions that have been between the mayor's office, myself, and the Commissioner of Health and Human Services, Linda Walsh. Just a couple of comments on some of the items contained in this proposed ordinance. So regarding the sale, kind of piggybacking on what you had just said about the scope. So regarding the sale or distribution of plastic balloon sticks, plastic floss sticks, plastic ear swabs, and cosmetics containing glitter, it seems unnecessarily cumbersome to retailers and for our Health and Human Services Department to enforce. A ban on these items is also largely symbolic, as it doesn't move the needle in waste reduction. Regarding helium balloons, I also don't think that banning the sale of helium balloons is going to move the needle as far as waste reduction. But I do think that banning the intentional release of helium balloons is preventing an act of deliberate littering of plastic into the environment. Regarding the prohibition or selling or distributing of disposable food serviceware that is not reusable, compostable, or recyclable, I was glad to see the inclusion in the amended version of if a retail establishment is if a food establishment is using 100% compostable items, that they are also needing to have a contracted compost service provider, because otherwise it would not move the needle and not be impactful. So that kind of addresses a concern that I had about that. Something that I looked at was the definition of reusable, because I would maybe make the argument that some of the black plastic takeout containers would actually fall under the reusable definition. And so I think that might be something to be a lesson learned from the plastic bag ban version 1.0, when some of the thin plastic bags were certainly phased out, but we all saw that there were thicker plastic bags that met the reusable definition at that point in time. And I would actually say that, I mean, I've personally reused these, and there are now grocery and retail stores that are selling those black plastic like food storage containers. They're being marketed toward folks that do like meal prep and things like that, but they're designed to be very similar to your just basic food storage containers at home that are reusable. So I think there might just be some clarification needed there. And regarding the sale and distribution of single-use plastic water bottles, so there wasn't kind of an internal discussion about within the municipality of not selling or distributing plastic water bottles anymore. I will say within DPW, that is the way that we provide like crews that are out on the road with water. Certainly we could figure out some way. Before there were rampant amounts of plastic water bottles, there were large 5-gallon water coolers or things like that that are portable. And the mayor did conduct a survey regarding plastic water bottles. There were some interesting findings, including there were 1,129 responses. 52% said that they try to avoid using single-use water bottles and only use them when they need to. 26% said they use single-use water bottles when there is no option to refill a reusable water bottle. And 51% said that they use a reusable water bottle daily. There were certainly other things, but those were kind of things that caught my eye. When asked, should the city of Newton adopt an ordinance that bans the sale of single-use water bottles that are 1 liter or less, 60% of respondents said yes. 35% said no, and 5% said unsure. And that's all that I have. I will say with the splash sticks, I actually feel like that falls within this food establishment scope and is very closely tied to the plastic stirrers that are currently banned. So that would not be kind of outside the scope, and certainly would be easier for Health and Human Services to enforce.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So next, what I'd like to do, if there's no other comments from counselors or the administration, is open it up for public comment. And it is
Counselor Noel, Vice Chair, Amy Mistral from the schools, I believe, is here, Mistro, from the schools, and would like to speak.
I apologize for not recognizing Ms. Mistro. Where are you? Excellent. Hello. You now have the floor.
Thank you so much. I had a conversation with Councilor Danberg last week and was grateful for the opportunity to comment both with her and here with the larger group today. I personally am very much in favor of the initiative. There are some impacts for the Newton Public Schools and the food service program. Certainly not insurmountable, but there will be some short-term impact. I'm happy to say that the single-use water bottles are really a non-issue. If you were to expand that to other water products, it might get a little bit more cumbersome for us. But the single-use water bottles are really, it's a negligible impact. We've totally this year sold about $6,000 in water bottles. It's less than 5,000 bottles. And they only have 27 cases on hand right now. So we can easily achieve the September 1st deadline for that. Overall, I was very pleased that we're largely in compliance now. One of the questions that I asked the food service management company to comment on was particularly one of the major vehicles in which we deliver food to the students is through a cardboard boat. And I was concerned whether that was compostable. It is compostable, and I verified that it is certified compostable, which I was very pleased by. We currently do not bundle the plastic recyclable utensils. They are offered separately, knife, fork, and spoon, and they are only for students to take should they want one. They are not offered proactively. The areas where we might run into problems are, and again, not insurmountable, but the feedback that I received from my general manager is the condiments, which would be for January 1st. Again, we can certainly make it happen. For us, it's an operational challenge, particularly at our elementary schools. Kids cupping condiments, which would largely be ketchup themselves, creates a big mess, both at the table where they're dispensing the condiments, potentially walking across the floor, dropping, those types of things. I think it's more manageable at the upper grades. And it would be a short-term additional expense for us to purchase the industrial size pumps and finding a place for them. But again, surmountable, just creates operational changes. The one that I think where we would be looking for some leniency is relative to the direction effective July 1st of 24, which is that reusable dishware and utensils would need to be, we need to have reusable and not recyclable. For us to, at our middle and high schools and a couple of our elementary schools, we do have dishwashers, but we just do not have the staff to orient to use reusable cutlery and to wash them and reuse it at that point. That would be quite challenging, both the expense to install dishwashers and the additional staffing that would be required to make that happen. But that is largely our biggest question.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I
Mr.
just
Gordon, do you want
comment?
to respond?
Yeah, on that last point, the reusable dishware is only for retail food establishments. That wouldn't impact the schools. That last point you made, that's not intended to impact the schools.
Perfect, even better.
Excellent. Thank you. So I want to now open it up to the public hearing, and just in terms of how this is going to go, what I'd like folks to do is raise their hand if they want to speak. And if they do have specific questions, to address them through me, so we don't have just people speaking over each other and answering. So if people are looking to get clarification, address it to the chair, and then we'll send it back out to ask the appropriate person to answer your question.
Could we see if Britta Lundberg is here? And if she is, let her speak first, because I think she needs to be in another meeting.
Thank you so much. I am here. May I speak?
Yes, I want to apologize to everybody who's got their hand up. We'll make this exception, and in general, everybody's time is valuable, so I try not to let people jump the line. So Britta, if you could be brief, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. I am Dr. Britta Lundberg. I'm chair of the board at Greater Boston Physicians for Social Responsibility and chair of the Environmental and Occupational Health Committee at the Massachusetts Medical Society. I'm also an infectious disease doctor and an internist. So I was asked to speak a little bit to the health effects of plastics. Of course, it goes without saying, we're exposed to plastics in every aspect of our daily lives. and that plastic use has increased exponentially in recent years. So why does that matter? Well, it matters because plastics have many known health effects, and these health effects derive from the quite toxic petrochemicals that they're derived from. As many of you know, plastic was first invented in 1855, then it was followed by Bakelite, another plastic that was formed out of known carcinogens, formaldehyde and phenol. And then it was followed by about 50 years later by polystyrene, polyvinyl chloride, polyethylene, and now we have tens of thousands of synthetic plastics, right? The phthalates, the bisphenols, the PFAS chemicals, all of which are incorporated into plastics. And the problem is that the components of those plastics leach out during daily use. They also degrade, where they form microplastics and fine particles. And one of your more famous Newton residents, Dr. Philip Landrigan, has just completed an extensive report on this, which I'm happy to share with you, from the Monaco Commission on March 21st, 2023. And he was over in Europe to put that out, talking about how we need to get off plastics urgently. And so I think as you sort of rearrange the chairs on the deck of the Titanic here as you're speaking about this, I think it's good to keep in mind what an urgent problem this is, and for all of us. And why is that? Well, the problem is that, as I mentioned, these chemicals leach out of the plastics, and those chemicals include, like if you take a styrofoam cup, you're not just drinking out of that styrofoam cup. The styrene from that styrofoam cup leaches into whatever fluid you're drinking. Also ethylbenzene, also toluene, also benzene. And those are all known carcinogens. Very interestingly, they leach out at a higher rate the hotter the fluid is in whatever you're eating in that container. And that also goes, it doesn't just go for styrofoam cups, right? It goes for water bottles. It goes for any of these food containers that you're getting takeout food in. So when you wonder about why the levels of cancer in society are skyrocketing, you need look no farther than plastic. Then one can also mention the climate effects of plastic, because plastic has become a great feedstock for the oil and gas industry. It's a petrochemical. And as we are going into, diverting, hopefully, most of our energy needs into renewables like wind and solar and heat pumps and that kind of thing, the petrochemical industry has made a huge push to shift into the production of plastics. And so there's a huge economic driver behind the production of plastic, which is increasing our atmospheric CO2 levels, as well as the direct pollution by plastic in the oceans. You have increasing CO2 from increased fossil fuel use, which is being driven in large part now by the production of plastics. And I'll just stop there.
Apologize for that. Thank you so much. That was very helpful. Forgot to mention, as I introduce folks to speak, and I'll go in the order in which the hands are raised, if you could introduce yourself and give your address, that would be helpful. So we'll start with Ms. Hicks.
Hi there, I'm Tony Hicks. I live at 34 Tyler Terrace. Been a Newton resident for over 20 years. Thanks so much for the chance to comment on this. I'm actually here both as a Newton resident and as a mom, and as in my capacity as board president of the Charles River Watershed Association. As you may know, CRWA from various Charles River and watershed related projects and progress, including the upcoming Earth Day cleanup. I think, we're in a position to just say unequivocally, we really hope this next step happens, because the 2019 ban on a lot of the single-use plastic items was a success. We need to sort of see the next step. I'm so impressed by how much knowledge about all of the different impacts has already been surfaced and addressed. I won't sort of recite any of those. But I think there's no question that the plastic crisis is daunting. We have these global and national and regional figures that are troubling. And we do have this opportunity to act locally, to do our part, not just to kind of take care of our community and our health in that immediate way, but also to push back against this really strong economic forces that fuel this single use culture. And so I think we're, I was, one of the things that I came across as I was sort of refreshing my understanding of what we're up against really is that if you combine the plastic packaging sold by Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Nestle in 2021, I was staggered to learn that 14.5 trillion pounds of plastic packaging were produced by those big corporate entities. So I just want to acknowledge it's a challenge. It's absolutely one that I think we're up for, and like to put myself, my family, and CRWA on record as 100% supporting this. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Sutesh Chumber. I apologize if I mispronounced that. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. No, that pronunciation was correct. Good evening. We are grateful for the councillors at Newton for the opportunity to speak and the work being done on sustainability in the environment. My name is Sutesh Chumber. I'm the Executive Director for the Coalition for Responsible Celebration. We are located in Woodcliff Lake, New Jersey. We have retailers in Newton who are impacted. The CRC is a national organization made up of manufacturers, distributors, retailers in the celebration industry who are focused on safe and responsible use and disposal of balloons and other celebratory products. We pride ourselves on being good environmental stewards who are proactively engaged in educating and informing consumers about responsible use and disposable practices, the development of and the implementation of recycling and reuse innovations, and forward-thinking product development to ensure environmental impact concerns are adequately and appropriately addressed. Whilst we wholly support the provision in the ordinance before the council as it relates to a ban on the release of helium balloons, and in fact support bans on the release of any and all types of balloons regardless of fill, we would like to flag a concern regarding the drafting of the measure and some unintended consequences that the council may wish to address before moving forward with the ordinance. The language currently bans the sale and distribution of helium-filled balloons in Newton, making it overly restrictive. Will likely not have a desired effect on reducing balloon waste in Newton as a community. Members will simply drive to outlying towns to purchase balloons. A far more effective way to reduce balloon waste with a proven history of doing that is using a three-pronged approach: weighting and stabilizing, education and outreach, and enhanced recycling. First, requiring the weighting and stabilization of helium-filled balloons has worked to great effect in other jurisdictions. Weighting and stabilization requirements have been found to be even more effective when you combine it with education and outreach, detailing safe and responsible balloon use and disposal. Finally, providing enhanced recycling opportunities at retailers who sell balloons is an important and highly effective element of the equation as well. People are far more prone to recycling if you make it easy for them. We look forward to partnering with you on education, information, and enhanced recycling efforts as you navigate improving responsible use and disposable practices in your community. In terms of helium, the market for non-helium balloons is growing rapidly. So helium shortages are largely due to political conflict. We monitor this. Balloon gas and medical helium are different grades. Further evidence is also telling us we've seen a reduction in balloon litter. A ban on sale, we don't feel is the answer. We do urge you to adopt the ban on the release of helium-filled balloons and urge you to reject the ban on sale and distribution in favor of the far more effective three-pronged approach of weighting, stabilization, education, outreach, and an enhanced recycling model. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Howard.
Hi, I'm Catherine Howard, 84 Fenwick Road. I just wanted to say, I look forward to the local restaurants having more sustainable materials in their takeout, especially because I'll certainly be frequenting these places a lot more because I avoid them because of the horrible plastic materials and waste. And I really look forward to being able to patronize my local restaurants a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Kessler.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Meryl Kessler. I live at 147 Prince Street, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Sustainable Materials Management Commission in my capacity as Vice Chair, and I joined several other commission members here tonight. As you know, last month, our commission submitted a letter to the entire City Council voicing our strong support for this draft ordinance, which is designed to substantially reduce the sale and use of single-use plastics here in Newton. We believe that this ordinance is a natural extension, as others have already mentioned, of Newton's existing and very successful ordinances that already ban plastic bags, foam polystyrene products, and nip bottles in our city. Moreover, we believe that the proposed ordinance will help bring the city closer to achieving the zero waste goals articulated in the City Council's May 2022 resolution to that effect. The expanded sustainable packaging ordinance will eliminate from our waste stream a variety of single-use plastics that cannot be reused, composted, or recycled, many of which have proliferated with the increased popularity of restaurant takeout food. We recognize that takeout food will remain a popular and important revenue stream for local restaurants, but we believe it is possible to provide takeout food in a more environmentally responsible way that will not impose a burden on businesses.
Thank you. Next up, oh, you have more? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. For all of these reasons, the commission urges this committee and the council as a whole to support the draft ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. McKaylee.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I think it's important to note as, oh, sorry. I forgot.
Yeah, can you introduce yourself?
I forgot. My name is Evan McKaylee, and I am the founder and leader of the Brimmer and May High School Environmental Club. And I'm here to speak on the behalf of youth on my club and who work with the City of Newton, that it is important to understand how youth come into this conversation too. Youth are a major part of what happens in the world, and we come right after. And it's important to understand that the youth should have decisions here. That's why the Brimmer and May Environmental Club has been working with the Newton Plastics Working Committee for the past year on this reduction plan. And we feel like it's important as students who have the world after we leave college to have a healthy and clean environment. And while we understand there are economic and financial issues, we believe that it's important to keep our environment clean as well. For example, I saw a report on CNN today that said that the Great Garbage Patch in the Pacific Ocean is now big enough to support an entire ecosystem. We do not think that this is sustainable at all, and this has negative impacts on the things that we eat. Now, you might be thinking that that's all the way on the West Coast, but it is important to remember that Newton is on the Charles River, which flows into Boston in the Atlantic Ocean. That will devastate the impacts on the fishing industry here in Boston and the seafood, which is a big deal in Boston and in our neighboring states. If we want to be responsible and be the beacon of light that Newton tries to be during these sustainable and progressive goals, we must find a way to pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'm Marcia Cooper. I live at 170 Evelyn Road, president of Green Newton. We have about 400 family members. many of whom are concerned about the plastic water bottles and the black plastic containers, among the other items that are mentioned in proposed ordinance. Well, if Newton moves forward with dramatically reducing the use of fossil fuels in its public buildings and homes, then of course it follows that we must also greatly reduce the use of single-use plastics that are produced from non-renewable fracked gas and oil. While black plastic containers can never be recycled or composted, we are fortunate that there are sustainable alternatives that are readily available to us. Personally, I've reused black containers. They're all over the place in my house, storing art materials and materials for Green Newton too. I won't use them for food any longer because I think there's a problem with that. But there's a limit to how many can be reused. So throwing those containers in the trash, knowing that they will eventually be incinerated with my other trash, is upsetting to anyone who understands the consequences of burning those materials. Well, thank goodness that we have easy access to refillable water bottles. Everybody has, just about every home, I'm sure, has refillable water bottles, and that our community has excellent tap water. Both of those options provide a ready and sustainable replacement for single-use plastic water bottles. The plans to install more indoor and outdoor water filling stations on city properties will make a difference, and it will help if businesses that sell food will allow their customers to refill their water bottles. The proposed ordinance is a much-needed step in the right direction. There is no doubt that more needs to be done to address the irreparable harm that inaction on reducing plastic waste is doing to our precious natural resources. That is why I hope councilors will vote in favor of banning each of the items under consideration without further delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. I'm Eli Lewis. I live on 56 Lomersa Road, and I'm speaking specifically in support of the proposed food packaging ordinance. It seems that the only concern for eco-friendly containers is that it will damage.
Vice Chair, can the speaker speak up a little bit? It's hard to hear.
Certainly. Mr. Lewis, do you mind raising your voice just a little bit more?
I'm sorry. Is this better?
It's better. You're doing great.
All right. Anyway, I live on 56 Lomersa Road, and I'm speaking specifically in support of the proposed food packaging ordinance. It seems that the only concern for eco-friendly containers is that it will damage local businesses by raising the price of takeout packaging, yet that isn't the case. In about 2 minutes, I found an offering for sushi containers, which are a large source of black plastic at $70 per 500 units, and at the same size, compostable containers at only $63 per 500 units. I'd also like to add that restaurants that use plastic-free packaging will receive more business from eco-conscious consumers, such as my family, and therefore will actually benefit from the change. It's a win-win, so I think there's no reason why that shouldn't be accepted. And then lastly, in more general terms, I'd like to note the significance of any form of plastic reduction, regardless of how effective the individual rules really are. These regulations demonstrate to corporations that consumers want change, and the more we challenge plastics, the more the market will adapt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Next up, we have Ms. Calloway.
Thank you. My name is Cindy Calloway. I live at 83 Grove Hill Avenue in Newton. I'm also a coordinator for Mothers Out Front, an environmental group in Newton. And we have been raising awareness about gas leaks in Newton. The fossil fuel just comes into play again here with our push for producing plastics. As we learned from Dr. Lundberg This is a big push and they want us to be dependent on plastic, which is where we are right now. And we have an urgent need to reduce that. We should be pushing the manufacturers to make these changes, but I have to say this is a great first step to see Newton taking in the plastic reduction effort. We have seen, as people have already mentioned, the plastic of the Pacific garbage patch, how large that is, and our landfills are overflowing. We're running out of space. Plastics don't decompose. They just break down into microplastics and they infiltrate everything, including the food we eat. So I am so happy to see that this ordinance is being proposed, and I hope that all of you will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Masterson.
Right. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and it's great to see everybody tonight. I'm with the Dining Collaborative with the Chamber. I have Johnny's in Newton and also recently Cabot's. We really want to work in partnership with this effort and feel that there's a lot of opportunity with how many people come into our restaurants to really do some great outreach. So I would really encourage thinking about how we use our community spaces to educate the public, because the public really needs to be on board with us. We have a lot of people that come into the restaurant that aren't from Newton, so may not be aware of these changes. And I think it would be helpful. You know, restaurants can often feel stuck in the middle between the public that may or may not know about an issue and the suppliers that may not be responding to the needs locally. So I think if we can work together, that would be beneficial. I do want to just say, though, two things can be true at the same time. It can be true that this is really important work, and it can also be true that there are challenges for the restaurants in terms of I don't know if Rob is on here from Honest Taqueria, but water, this is, and I'm with you guys, but this is just an economic reality. Water is a very high margin item for a lot of those fast casual restaurants. And it also is the most healthy option, really, when you look at the soda in plastic and all these other options. So a small place losing hundreds of dollars right now is tough. I mean, we're going to do it, but it's just important to know that there are other impacts that you may not think about right away. I would also just like to bring up the challenge, if we're really going to do this and really make sure the equation goes all the way through to the end. We have a big belly trash compactor outside of Johnny's. It is often stuffed with compostable takeout containers. We compost with Black Earth at Johnny's, and I bought compost to put in our, in our planters so we can complete the cycle. But all compost containers that Black Earth takes has to be BPI certified, and there's only a certain number of those. So I just present this because there's a lot of nuance to this conversation to get to where we actually want to get to. And I would just invite the city to sort of almost think bigger and see, are there going to be like receptacles for compostable takeout containers? If we can get enough people to do that and to buy certified, is that something? Because to just have them thrown away feels kind of like a slap in the face to the effort. The other thing is with the water, we currently spend at Johnny's about $20,000 a year on our water bill, which is a lot of money. I'm trying to think creatively about the refilling stations that you can see at the airport. Like, is there something we can do as a city? I don't know, is it possible for restaurants to have them and then get a break on their water bill if we're offering that? Like, it's important to work together, but it's also really important to understand we want to do this. We do have some limitations. Some timeframes are tricky. So please know that we're with you. Let's communicate this to the public. Let's make these good steps together. But understand that we also need to be heard from in terms of just where the sticking points are for us.
Thank you. That's helpful. Next up, Ms. Bray.
Hi, my name's Karen Bray. I live at 38 Stern Street, and I support this ordinance to ban single-use plastic water bottles, black plastic takeout trays, and other plastic. I'm also a choreographer, and I've created a piece that we performed in front of Newton City Hall called the attack of the single-use plastic water bottle, and I hope to be able to do it again for all of you sometime. I'm so saddened when I go to city events and I see trays of single-use plastic water bottles wrapped in more plastic, no less. They say money talks, but not here. The bottled water companies have us bamboozled. In other words, our delicious, tested daily tap water flowing in from the Quabbin Reservoir is free. And I just wonder, how much money would the city and each of us as individuals save if we provided a pitcher of water and mugs at meetings, parties, and events instead of plastic water bottles? As of 2023, the global bottled water industry has a market size of $342 billion. They just have us so bamboozled. It boggles my mind that people pay to have water driven in to sit on shelves. We don't know where the water comes from. We don't know how long it's been traveling on trucks. We don't know how long it's been sitting and on shelves. And I think we could think of a lot of better things to do with those billions of dollars. And to Greg Riebman and Newton businesses who say they can't afford to buy containers for takeout other than the black plastic containers, I say, let's help them out. Let's bring our own reusable containers for takeout. I know it's a little bit inconvenient, but I've done it. It can be done. It means going to the restaurant to order your takeout because you have to bring your containers. This is completely permissible according to the health department, but let's have our Newton restaurants pay nothing for takeout containers. So I think Mother Earth is worth that little extra inconvenience. I encourage all residents to bring your own takeout containers. And I just want to say that I'm so grateful to our city councilors and all of you who have worked tirelessly to make this ordinance happen, and I would be overjoyed to see it pass. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Mr. O'Hara.
Hi, my name is Carl O'Hara, and from O'Hara's and Patty's in Newton. I want to thank Councilor Noel for hosting this here. I just think we're rushing this a little too fast. Like, you forgot to tell the hospitals, you forgot to tell the hospital, and the supermarkets really don't seem like they know what's going on. Don't you think we should slow down just a little? Like O'Hara's and Patty's takeout containers, I have some of my containers, I have 6 to 8 months worth of supply sitting in the warehouse where I buy from because I've committed to them. And now I'm just gonna take those and get rid of them. I just think you're moving too quick and it's almost not fair. I also find the change in the wording tonight, all of a sudden you changed the dates, you changed everything that, as the dining lines that we received, you changed it. So, and we only could see what you put up on the screen there. So instead of us reading it at home, 4-page document, we got to see what Alan put up there and scrolled through. Also, the impact on manufacturers to supply us. I know you guys all shop online, it's cool. You can see the white containers the same as the black, but that is not in fact the case if you buy in quantity. You need to give the manufacturers time to produce a white container. It used to be the black was most popular, and now it's not. So I don't believe you're fair trying to rush this through. I think you need to give the restaurants more time. You need to communicate better with all the people that use all these different things. Again, the supermarkets, the hospitals, the restaurants. We need a better communication. And I'll leave it at that. I really hope you delay the whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up we have, and I apologize, I don't have a full name. I have the initials AC.
Hi, yes. My name is Amanda Capone, and I am a certified balloon artist, and I service much of the Newton community. I would like to express my opposition to the proposal for the sale and distribution and intentional release of helium-filled balloon being prohibited in the city. I find it strange that you're bulking the ban of helium balloons with single-use takeout containers and food service. I'm just not sure how that comes in to the scope of the food service, this whole ordinance. I feel like it's snuck in. Balloons are not something people use every day. They don't buy them every day. Balloons are used to celebrate special occasions. They create memories and they spread happiness. As mentioned earlier, Americans use a large amount of single-use plastic water bottles. There is just no comparing this to the use of helium balloons. Banning helium balloons is not the solution. As a certified balloon artist, I make sure all helium balloons are weighted down. I do not sell helium balloons for the purpose of a balloon release. If the purpose of this ordinance is to ban the release of helium balloons for the purpose of releasing helium balloons, I urge you to change the wording. Banning helium balloons is not the solution. Many balloon retailers can be educated and make sure that they add weights to the balloons and that they do not sell the helium balloons with the intention of a balloon release. Balloons spread joy and create happiness. With the huge increase of mental health, it seems detrimental to ban balloons. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Smith.
Hi, thank you to the council for hosting this. Very glad to be here. My name is Kate Smith and I'm the chef and owner of Thistle and Leek in Newton Center. And first of all, I want to echo some of what Karen said and some of what other people said. I'm so thrilled to see the awareness being raised for the harmful effects of plastic. It's very inspiring for me to see the younger generation get involved and care so much about this because I think it is a really important issue right now. I have 2 very small children and we do everything we can to help protect the environment for the future. That being said, I do think it's really important to focus on consumer education and working with us. We as restaurants, we care, we want to work on this. We want to find solutions that are beneficial for everybody. But we're also emerging from a pandemic that knocked out countless independent restaurants and has been a real hardship. And we are very cost sensitive. A lot of the bigger companies, we talk a lot about the Pepsi, the Cokes, these large corporations, but they're not the ones that feel this. My restaurant means nothing to them. But it does to our community. And I think that this ordinance has the biggest effect on restaurants and small retail businesses. The larger chains aren't as impacted because they have far more buying power. And as far as the prices, I commend everyone who looked into the pricing and did their research. Like it's such, it shows such dedication to the cause, and I really appreciate that. However, our pricing is different than what you get online. We don't, those are retail prices. We pay wholesale prices. And unfortunately for us, for the wholesale, the black plastics and some of those are significantly cheaper. And also the availability in quantity of white plastics and compostable materials just isn't there consistently. Anyway, thank you. And I really hope we can work together to find something that works for all of us.
Thank you. We have a few people, Ms. Masterson, who haven't spoken yet that I want to get to them first, and then I'll come back to you. Next up is Mr. Favuza.
Hi, thank you. And I'd be happy to have Ms. Masterson speak again before I do. She referenced me earlier, but I'd be happy to let her go and then come back to me.
Sure. Okay. Ms. Masterson. And if you've already spoken, if you don't mind taking your hand down, just so I can keep track of everybody.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify something, that people can bring in their own takeout containers for their own leftovers. It's currently not allowable based on Board of Health concerns for someone to bring in their own container, give it to a restaurant kitchen and have them put takeout food in it. So that's really important because I know there's a lot of people on the call and I don't want them having expectations of going to a restaurant and putting the restaurant in a difficult position. This is exactly the kind of thing we're talking about around working together for concise, important information that we can all work with. Thanks.
Thank you.
If I might interject a little bit
Can
regarding.
I just ask, I'm asking people to raise their hands. If you want to raise your hand, I don't want people talking over each other. So let me take these next two commenters and then I will come back to you. So Mr. Favuza.
Thank you. Karen did mention me earlier, and I am from the Anastar area, and we do serve a tremendous amount of single serve water, and we are someone who does recycling, single stream, cardboard, and we try. And the ban against the plastic water bottles is something, by all means, down the road is something we can do, but it is currently the most healthy option that we have for a beverage. We also offer, free tap water to consumers now, but they don't want it. It is not a matter of is it available or not. It's been available, to our consumers from day one, and it will continue to be. The question I have is, the ban is set to go into effect July of 24, but there isn't an alternative. On this call, you guys spoke to the fact that, Coke and Pepsi have thought about doing an aluminum can. We really need that to come on board and to be an economical thing. The plastic water bottle, not only is it a extremely big seller, but it happens to be also our most profitable beverage, and it actually reduces the cost of all of those other beverages, and helps reduce the cost of just food in general. So banning it will cause some harm to us, but the other side of it, it is a healthy option. And that's where I look at it. We're attacking the one item that is the most healthy for children in schools, adults. So if you're a consumer going into a place to buy a sandwich, to buy a slice of pizza, and you don't have a beverage with you, what we're now telling that consumer, go after that sugary drink. So I think without that alternative in place, and this committee mentioned that alternative isn't there yet. Carl had mentioned we think we're rushing into it. Why don't we get our ducks in a row so that we can have that alternative in place, so that we can provide a healthy option to children in schools, adults, anyone. That is something. And then you mentioned the recyclable feature of a can. Currently today there is no CRV on water. And I think obviously that is not something a city can mandate. But I think Karen talked about making this a bigger project. I think if we allow cities, or Coke to get a CRV on a can, or even that plastic water bottle, you will see the recycle rate increase. There are other states that I have lived in, and they allow the recyclability of almost any type of plastic and glass, and their recycle rate is far greater than ours because they've incentivized, they've educated, and they've trained people that, hey, let's do this. And I think Karen mentioned that, and I think we've got to do a better job of educating the consumer, the restaurants, anyone, everyone. I think I can speak for myself and the others. We want to be eco-friendly. We try. But again, those wholesale pricing, costs and what you get online truly are different. And I'd be thrilled to get a copy of that and just provide some context on the other side back to this committee. Again, thank you for the time, and I look forward to aiding in this progress as we go forward.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Shannon. Shannon?
Hi, thank you. Sorry, it took me a moment to find the unmute button. I'm actually somebody who's not a Newton resident. I'm just a food enthusiast. So I was curious and I was listening in to tonight's call. I just really want you guys to consider what you're about to do to the small businesses in Newton. I have some of my restaurants that I enjoy very much in Newton, and I've seen others that have closed through the struggles of the last few years. But these things that you do, it comes with a consequence. Consumers will decide not to go somewhere for something as simple as, I I don't understand the paper straw thing. It's ridiculous. You know, a wooden spoon, as gross, it changes the texture and the taste of the food. So it's just, I really worry that this is a kill the small business or kill the small restaurants ordinance rather than a plastic reduction ordinance. I mean, I agreed with everything the balloon lady had to say. I didn't quite understand why that was in here either. You know, we can't overlook the joy in life, and we can't push things through in our zealous, you know, being eager to save the environment, because you could be killing something else that brings joy to the community and eating out and bringing people into your community from outside the neighborhood.
Thank you. Ms. Kong.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to address what Kay was saying about the takeout containers. But before that, personally, I just want to say that I feel that I would actually do takeout from restaurants more if I knew that they were doing it very sustainably. My new favorite restaurant currently is the Grape Leaf Grill in Newton Highlands, because they have reusable containers that I can take home and then take back, and it's zero waste, and it's absolutely wonderful along with their delicious food. But in regards to the takeout containers, both Ms. Bray and Ms. Masterson are correct. So in 2019, we got clarification from the previous HHS Commissioner, Debbie Youngblood, that it was fine to take takeout containers to get filled with takeout food. And we received a letter to that effect. However, now we have a new commissioner, Linda Walsh, and upon asking her to clarify post-COVID, she has determined that it is not allowed to do takeout containers to be filled by the establishment. It is all right to take a container as a doggy bag style to fill yourself with, you know, remaining food from a restaurant. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Bray.
Yes, I was just going to address exactly what Sun Woo just said. And I was going by what Commissioner Youngblood said. I have taken my takeout containers into restaurants, and they have been willing to fill my takeout food in my containers for me. And so I didn't realize that that has changed now, and I'm really disappointed to hear that. The commissioner said that it was up to individual restaurants to decide whether or not they wanted to do it, but that it was legal at the time. So I guess that has changed. So thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mr. McKaylee.
Hi, thank you again. I just wanted to mention on the recycling part and plastics that while recycling seems like the miracle of, you know, waste, I wanted to mention that we have a saying in the community, which is reduce, reuse, and recycle. Recycling should be the last resort for anything, because when we recycle things, it's not, we should be looking to reduce and reuse. And this ordinance puts that and recycling on top of all of that. And it's important that we look to reduce and reuse, because we can't just get everywhere by recycling. It's just not possible. And a good look at that is Indiana. They had that recycling fire last week, and it's just a horrible event, and it's something that we definitely need to make sure that we take care of, which is, you know, we can't be reliant just on recycling. We have to be able to take the steps of reusing and reducing as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I don't see any other hands. Is there any counselors or any members from the community that want to speak? Terry, is that a hand? You're on mute. Terry, I think you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I live in Newton Center, and I patronize Sandwich Works, which has been there for 30 years. and I've spoken to the owner of Sandwich Works, and his big concern is he sells a lot of water in plastic bottles. If those plastic bottles are banned, the choice of water in cans in his supply chain would actually double or triple per can. And so he's very concerned about this plastic water bottle ban. But he also has in his restaurant a recycle bin, which is provided by the company that he gets the water and the sodas from. They provide a free bin where people can throw their used plastic water bottles, soda bottles, and everything into this bin, which I think is something very important. And I haven't seen it at other businesses. But one more thing is that if these businesses, if they can't sell water, then people will choose more unhealthy alternatives like Coke, Pepsi, Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, iced tea, which all have huge amounts of sugar in them. So I just wanted to let you know that could happen. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two more hands. First is Miss Kiesel. I apologize if I've mispronounced your name.
Oh, that's okay. And I'm here to speak on a different issue tonight. I'm in Arlington, but I thought I'd just add something to what the young gentleman said. I think his name was Evan, about recycling being the last resort. You know, I'm an environmental scientist and I've covered this issue a lot as well, is that recycling of plastic, and I think a couple of other people briefly addressed this, is a particularly onerous and environmentally destructive process in and of itself. So even if you're managing to increase recycling of these plastic bottles, it is still a pretty destructive process environmentally. It's not even usually considered recycling in the business. It's considered downcycling, because you're breaking down this very toxic product into an inferior product. And almost always these recycling plants are located in or near low-income communities, and the emissions are then absorbed by the public health risks that low-income communities face. And I know this because I grew up in one of those communities that was where one of these recycling plants were located, where asthma rates and cancer rates were very high. So there are costs that are being externalized onto other communities for this plastic recycling. So even if you manage to maximize those opportunities, that's something that people should really understand as well. That happens. You're burdening other places with the fallout of plastic recycling. Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like President Albright, you will have the last word. Oh, wait, Councilor Danberg we'll go with President Albright first.
I wanted to thank everybody I've learned a lot tonight from all kinds of speakers, but I'm only speaking to clarify one thing, and that is that water is not free. That statement was made earlier, and I think it was Ms. Masterson who told us that she spends $20,000 a year on water. So, you know, we need to know that water is not free. That's all. Thank you.
Councilor Danberg, do you want to wrap up this public hearing?
Thank you very much. Yes, Councilor Noel, I would be happy to do that. Just a couple of comments. I first of all want to thank everybody who took the time to come tonight and to speak. We have all learned a great deal on all sides of this, and we are trying to do what is right, and we are also trying to take into consideration everyone that will be affected by this. The towns of Concord and Arlington we have spoken with them on a number of occasions to find out how this went in their town and how it's going now. In Concord, they've had it now since 2012, and the gentleman who owns a grocery store, it was the one that we spoke with in Concord, and he said that it's really become a non-issue. another comment is that if people don't have plastic water bottles, single-use plastic water bottles available to them to purchase, they will then move to sodas. I sincerely doubt that that would happen en masse, because water drinkers drink water for a reason. And I also want to point out that most bottled water is packaged tap water, or it comes from reservoirs that have not been fluoridated. Tap water is held to a higher standard than bottled water. And the plastic that the water comes in poses health risks also. So I think I will leave it there for now. If anyone who has not spoken would like to speak or would like to say anything more after me, please feel free. I would also remind everyone that until the 1980s, no one thought they needed to carry water with them at all times. It was an ingenious marketing coup on the part of the plastics industry, and it has now become a habit of convenience. So let's do some more homework. I think I see Councillor Maliki with her hand up. So I am not the last to speak. And Councillor Baker.
We're still going. So thank you, Councillor Danberg. Councillor Maliki.
Great point by Councillor Danberg about we didn't used to have water bottles. We used to have a lot more working water fountains, and I wish we had those again. I had a question. There was a reference to Hint, which is, I gather, is a type of flavored water. And I'm wondering if we're not covering that, is that because it's covered by the bottle deposit law? I'm just wondering if there's anything that we are not covering that is not covered by the existing state deposit law.
We wanted, I can answer that, and perhaps Alan Gordon will chime in after me. We wanted to leave options. For example, we think that at least some people who were accustomed to drinking regular tap water in a single-use plastic bottle might move to flavored regular water or carbonated water. In our meetings in Newton, we regularly out of a can drink flavored carbonated water. So there are other options that are also healthy.
So that means they could switch to something that will still not have a deposit on it. And
yes, that's true. In the perfect world, we would get rid of all plastic water bottles, and maybe someday there will be the will to do that. That's not our goal for this time around.
Okay.
Councillor Baker, I see your hand raised, but Mr. Gordon, do you have a response to add on to that, or is different issue?
No, I was just going to respond to Councillor Maliki.
Okay.
Okay. So I think the main point with the plastics, single-use, single-serve plastic water bottles is that the bottling industry, the plastics industry, et cetera, has really pushed the fact on us that we need bottled water, and we can all turn on our taps and get bottled water. We can't turn on our taps and get Coke or, flavored water or carbonated water, et cetera. And so there are communities, and certainly in our small group, we discussed this, but really felt this was going a bit too far at this point in time, that are banning all beverages in plastic bottles. So I'm not suggesting we do that today. I'd like to see industry provide beverages in non-plastic bottles, but water we can get out of the tap. So that's the reason. And these other options will still be available. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Because I'm old enough to remember when the only thing that you could get Coke in was a Coke bottle. So maybe its time has come again. But I guess I would just ask Councilor Danberg, the result of the comments and information tonight, somehow, not just in the report, but is there going to be a modified version of the ordinance or something? What's the next step? I guess is what I'm trying to.
Yes. So we're going to vote to hold it tonight. I have, we've all got a lot of information to process. My recommendation would be, I'm concerned that the ordinance as it is going to have a difficult time making it through the full council. And I think what my hope is that the docketers would take the feedback tonight and think about perhaps making some revisions, and we'll bring it back up for discussion. Councilor Danberg, do you have some, what do you think of proposing that?
That is the plan. We wanted to hear what everyone had to say this evening and take it back. Our working group is working on a regular basis, very hard, and we will take it back, discuss it, and see what tweaks we might want to make.
Excellent. So President Albright, does that answer your question, Councilor Baker?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Excellent. So I'm looking for a motion to hold unless President Albright has something else she'd like to add.
So I will move hold. I also wanted to ask if we could, as a group, as a council perhaps, request our neighboring community, town, Waltham, Needham, Wellesley, Boston, to think about and entertaining the same kind of ordinance we're entertaining, so that people can't step across and buy, the bottled water in Watertown that they used to buy in Newton. I think we should, write them a letter saying this is the ordinance we're thinking of passing and we'd like you to participate, not for our sake, but for the sake of, so to speak. So that's my suggestion. And I move hold.
So Councilor Norton, do you want to get a comment in on that before we hold this?
Yeah, super quickly. That's how this works. Concord did it years ago. Other communities have done it. So now people look to other communities as examples, just like we were, I think, 8th on plastic bags. Now there's like 150. So I'm quite confident that would happen, but I strongly urge the folks here, don't go home and weaken this. Definitely listen and so forth, but I would really hope that we would try to be bold. I didn't count, I think 19 or 20 counselors had co-docketed this. Doesn't mean that they necessarily all agree to every detail, but that was a pretty strong showing. So you all worked really hard on it. Obviously there's more input to get, but I really hope that you wouldn't take the vice chair's comment to go back and actually try to make everyone happy. We never make everyone happy. Thanks.
I appreciate that clarification. The docket as it speaks is requesting a discussion and possible amendment. So I wouldn't assume that all the docketeers are on board with every cranny of this item. So we've got a motion to hold. All in favor of holding on the committee, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay. So the item moves forward to hold. I think we have everybody here but Councilor Krinsman. Before we go to the next item, I just want to do some housekeeping. The next item is a discussion item as well. And if you're here for trees, we are not going to make it to trees tonight. I have a theory that no good policy gets made if we start at 9:30, and the tree ordinance is pretty detailed. So we're going to hold that till the next meeting. But I want to introduce the next item. It's item number 74-23, requesting a home rule petition. Councilors Norton, Humphrey, Malachy, Leary, Bowman Downs, Lucas, Kelly, Albright, Ryan, Laredo, Wright, Lipoff, and Markowitz requesting a home rule petition so that the city can create an ordinance to prohibit the purchase or application of anticoagulant rodenticides in Newton. So Councilor Norton, do you want to kick that off for us?
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Vice Chair. So I hope folks had a chance to read the articles and look at the photos that were included in the packet. I don't think the language from Arlington made it in, but we can forward that around next time. But basically, this was docketed because, as folks are aware, we've had some very sad stories in the news recently, but it's not just a recent occurrence where eagles and owls and other raptors are dying from ingesting these rodenticides that are put down to kill rats. The rats eat them, they don't die right away. By the time the birds eat them, the poison then does its job on them. So they're not the intended target. And what's ironic is these birds are a way to control rat populations. And if anyone had a chance to review or attend or review later a webinar that Amy Sangiolo had organized when she was running for mayor, she had a renowned national rat control expert. And he was very clear that you don't kill your way out of this problem. You have to control the source of food that attracts the rats. They just breed too quickly. So we're not being effective with this solution, and it's having some really other negative impacts. We do not have the authority to unilaterally ban the application of these rodenticides here in Newton. Like so many things, the state holds that power to themselves, and we would have to go for a home rule petition, as Arlington has done. There is a separate docket item that is just about application by the city and city contractors that will be heard in May in public facilities. We do have an expert, Laura Kiesel, who just spoke recently about the plastics, and I hope at this point we would be able to turn it over to her, as she's been working on this for years and has some expertise that I think would be helpful for all of us, if that would be all right, Madam Vice Chair.
That is fine by me. I'm looking for Miss Kiesel. Is she still here?
I am here.
Excellent. Okay.
My
Welcome.
camera. Hi, how are you?
Excellent. I want to give you the floor now.
Great. So thank you to Councilwoman Norton. I've been working on this, as she stated, for a number of years. My background is, my master's degree is in wildlife conservation biology and natural resources sciences, and I worked in environmental and wildlife advocacy for years. But I became involved with this because it kind of just landed on my doorstep, where one day in 2015, I was walking out of my building and a pest control professional was laying no less than 20 bait stations around the property. And when I asked what it was, he evaded me, but it was labeled and no one understood what was in it. And I went to my landlord and I explained how this worked. And something that's really disturbing is that legally, pest control professionals do not have to be transparent about the impacts of these poisons. And in fact, they can even lie about them. So even when I would tell my landlord, this can kill my cat if a mouse gets into my apartment that's fed on this bait, and this will kill the red-tailed hawks that are nesting nearby, the pest control professional said that I didn't know what I was talking about, that is impossible. And that is very well documented. So I am also a journalist, and I have covered this a number of times as an issue. The first article I wrote was in 2018, and I gave a kind of primer background, and I did a lot of coverage of the city of Somerville and what they were doing with rat control as they kind of shifted away from poisons. They don't have any legislation, but they did an integrated pest management plan. It's important to note that these poisons, second generation anticoagulant rodenticides, were actually banned in 2015 from over-the-counter sales because they were poisoning thousands of children across the country. These were disproportionately low-income children, and particularly low-income children of color. And so these were banned from over-the-counter sales, but the EPA was still allowing licensed pest control professionals to use these in what are called tamper-resistant bait stations. As I said, they don't necessarily usually disclose what are in these bait stations or their impacts. But if that may be why many of you, if you have noticed, maybe 10 years ago, you didn't see these bait stations everywhere, but around 2015 is when they started to proliferate a lot around the metro area and the state. I think because the EPA did that ban, and the model for selling these shifted to that prescription model in these bait stations. Here in Arlington, we have, and it is all over the state, but you may have heard that last month we lost a bald eagle, MK the eagle. It was all over the news. Like, this is her photo. She was the first bald eagle we have had in Arlington. This is her with her 2 chicks from last spring. She was the first bald eagle to nest in Arlington, breeding a part of a breeding pair in over 50, even probably closer to 60 years since DDT wiped them out of the state and most of the country in the mid-century last century. So it's tragically ironic because it feels like we're repeating our mistakes with a different pesticide. So it took decades and decades for bald eagles to start to recover. They were still endangered in 2007 in the United States, and they were still endangered in Massachusetts only like about a decade ago. They came off the endangered state species list in 2012, but they were still threatened up till 2021, and then they were demoted to species of special concern. So they're still listed. They're still in kind of a precarious stage, but they were just demoted then. And then the same year that they were demoted from threatened status, several bald eagles died. One was in Waltham, and these are just the ones that we know about. There are probably more that just were not being tracked. But the first one was in Waltham, and then only a few months later, MK's first viable fledgling pair, one of them, C25, died, and the necropsy showed it was from anticoagulant rodenticide. And only about 6 months after that, here in Arlington, we lost an entire family of great horned owls in one of our town parks due to these, like a mother and then 2 fledglings died all within a few days of each other. And so we in Arlington started doing a lot of advocacy work to try to get these reined in with what avenues were available to us. We did ban them on all publicly owned, like managed and owned lands in Arlington, and we did submit a home rule petition. And as a journalist covering this, some things that surprised me, I had an article that I completed after C25 died was, I could not find a single study that attested to any kind of efficacy of these poisons to reduce rodent populations in urban or suburban ecosystems, or even really anything outside of very small islands for very short term. So there's really no data to back up that they work. The data that does exist just shows that rat populations have continued to increase with the use of poisons, not meaning that the poisons necessarily are increasing them, but they're not being effective at reducing them at the very least, the data shows. And that makes sense because of a few different reasons. Whenever you're using bait all over the place, you're luring rodents in. Rodents can build resistance to these rodenticides the way, if you've heard of antibiotic resistance, they eat so much of this and they breed so rapidly that rodents within a few generations can begin to build resistance to these rodenticides, but their predators can't because their predators cannot outbreed the poisons. And then you're killing off their predators. And so you're artificially creating an environment where these rat populations will perpetuate and even artificially explode. And a single owl can kill like 1,500 rats in a year. Poisons can't compete with that, but I feel like it's almost like a model that the pest control industry is eradicating their best competition for rodent control, which is the predators, the natural predators. It's not just birds of prey, but they are the brunt of it, but this is also killing a lot of people's cats and dogs. It's also killing other types of wildlife like coyotes and foxes and raccoons and possums that all do eat rodents as well. And as I said, it is dangerous for children. And even though the bait stations may reduce poisonings of children, they don't eliminate them. Children can and still do get poisoned. And I would witness young children on my building's property sticking their hands into these bait stations. And I always was very concerned about the public health risks of them. The studies also show that the rodents that have these poisons in their system are much more likely to carry and transmit diseases to humans. And because it lasts so long in their system and it makes them act kind of inebriated, it makes them do things they normally wouldn't do, like stagger. I've taken a bunch of films of rats staggering in the middle of Mass Avenue at 4 p.m. in heavy foot traffic with little children going around them. So that increases a lot of the opportunities for transmission of disease, which is ironic because that's usually what is being offered as reasons we need these poisons is, oh, because rats are such a public health risk. But the data actually shows that they increase the risks of transmission for diseases. So I'm willing to answer questions as best as I can, but I think that that's basically background of where we are right now. Arlington's waiting on its home rule petition. I and a number of people are also working to, there's a bill that would get rid of the state law that stops municipalities from being able to regulate or restrict these and other pesticides. But in the absence of that, more municipalities submitting home rule petitions are probably our best opportunity to be able to rein in the impacts of them. And I'm sorry, my cat is having a meltdown right now. I don't know why.
Thank you. That was so helpful and interesting. I appreciate you hanging on to our meeting tonight to be able to share that information with us. I want to take some questions because you definitely seem like you have a lot of information that would be helpful to us. Just as a point of process, either Counselor Norton or maybe Ms. Kiesel, if you could tell us, just for people watching at home, what we're doing tonight, explain the home rule petition process so people at home understand what we're actually going to be able to accomplish tonight if we vote yes on this.
Similar to the process we went through to change the name from alderman to counselor, similar to the process we went through with the building electrification. The state rules do not allow cities and towns to do a lot of things unilaterally, including this. And so we would vote through a home rule petition, and I had sent Ms. Norton language from Arlington, which could be considered tonight or another night. And that goes to our delegation, and then they file it, and then the whole state has to vote on it. The state legislature has to vote on it.
Can I, that's helpful. Can I ask a process question, Counselor Norton? So it's not, we can't just vote up or down on this item. We've got to vote on the language that we're submitting.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
But I see Counselor Baker has his hand up, and I always defer to him on anything legal or leaf blower.
Counselor Ryan, are you okay if we take Counselor Baker out of order in case it's pertaining to this legal matter?
Of course.
Counselor Baker.
I'm not sure I'm due all this deference, but you do need the language to vote the home rule petition. But the point I was going to make is that assuming the policy is one we would like to see effective, I do think it's worth having the ordinance sort of lined up to fill it out, because a home rule petition will authorize the creation of an ordinance, but oftentimes does not go into the exact terminology. And so this is one of those places where some consultation with the law department about sort of both stages keep in mind. I don't know how it would fare at the State House, but certainly wouldn't want to be in a situation where we got the permission and we were all taking another 6 months to get the ordinance wrong. So that's the only point I would make in terms of their process.
Point taken. So for process tonight, we'll do an up or down vote if we wish to pursue a home rule petition. And if it's affirmative, then we will bring back the language for a vote at a different meeting. Does that make sense?
You would, I think, take a straw vote and hold the item, but get the language
Okay.
back and vote it the next time. That's
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Okay, is there anything else you wanted to add, Counselor Baker? No,
that's it.
Okay, Counselor Ryan.
Okay, thank you, Madam Acting Chair, Vice Chair. I have a question because I guess of my age. So I was under the grand impression that when we outlawed DDT and all the animals came back in my neighborhood, and hawks, anytime you look in the sky, all the hawks in the I thought we were all done with this, with animals dying from these poisons. Is this an end around the way they're killing the rats now and the poisons they're using? And the other thing is, who's the sponsor of the bill at the State House to make sure that we don't pass these home rule petitions? If someone can answer those questions.
Let's see. So maybe I will ask Ms. Kiesel to answer the one about, like, is this a new version of DDT? And then maybe Counselor Norton could talk if she knows the process at the State House, that piece.
A number of biologists and myself agree that we kind of feel like this is kind of the new DDT. I mean, it works differently. It doesn't target all of the same animals DDT did, but bald eagles are an overlap. DDT impacted them in a different way where it thinned out the shells so that they couldn't have offspring, and it extirpated them that way because they also eat a lot of fish. A lot of people were surprised when bald eagles started dying because people thought bald eagles don't really eat a lot of rodents, but they do, especially those who, like the ones here in Arlington, live in urban areas where that is an available food source, and especially during times when they're nesting and they're eating a more varied diet. But in terms of the impact, it is very reminiscent of DDT, like a lot of the mistakes that I feel like are being repeated. A lot of times we are just banning, it feels like, these chemicals piecemeal as we find out too late their impacts, because we're not really a nation that follows the precautionary principle. So we sort of wait until things reach a certain level and then we start taking action. And unfortunately, that's entrenched in a lot of our policies. But you know, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has been every other year they analyze these poisons, the anticoagulant rodenticide poisonings, and even though their data is woefully inadequate, they do every year conclude that this is a very significant poison with very significant impacts on wildlife. And then they'll write, but we're going to continue to let it be registered and used under these processes. So, but there's a lot of data that the EPA has to attest to their impacts.
Okay, the other question that I asked, which I really like to know, you said that there is a bill to make sure that we don't have these home rule petitions?
No, there's a bill that would stop. Right now, municipalities can't ban or restrict any pesticide, not just these, but any pesticide, like without state permission, because there's a state pesticide law. The way there's some other laws that sometimes why there are home rule petitions, but there is a specific law that's been introduced every legislative session for the past 5 or 6 years that would return control from the state to the municipalities to allow them to regulate pesticides that at least me and some other allies are working on to also advocate for, because if the control was returned to municipalities, we could have banned these. Arlington wanted to ban it when the first bald eagle died, and perhaps MK would still be alive if we had that capability. I mean, obviously eagles don't stay in the same municipal borders all the time, but since this is her main nesting ground, maybe she'd still be alive if we had banned it, since there were so many bait boxes with these poisons right in the immediate vicinity of where her nest was.
Okay, I'm a firm believer that when the animals come close to extinction, we're going next. So it really bothers me, all of this. It really bothers me. Thank you.
Can I add something really quick too? Is that, like I said, the EPA data is very inadequate, and I work closely with the New England Wildlife Center. They're the ones who treated MK when she died. They told me that they alone get between 100 and 200 wildlife animals every year across species, but again, mostly birds of prey that have this poisoning, and that the death rates are getting higher and that they're getting harder to treat, and that they're requiring now in the past few years more in-depth treatment. Like, so for instance, they had an owlet, a great horned owlet that they got in last year. It was the only owl that survived of an entire nest with like its 3 siblings, and the 2 parents all died. And it took them 9 months of daily intensive treatment of vitamin K infusions for this owl's blood to coagulate or clot again on its own. And they said to them, anecdotally, it seems indicative that it's getting harder to get these animals to get their blood to clot because these poisons are just becoming so ubiquitous. So the poisoning rates they're seeing are so much more severe than they were even 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow. Counselor Baker, you still have your hand up. Do you have something you want to say? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Will we have an expert among us? This is very enlightening. Counselor Humphrey.
Not a question for the experts, but do we want to have like a straw poll or something tonight in terms of directing us on how to move forward?
Sure.
Because as you said, or I guess there was discussion earlier that we probably want to get some more language in front of us, but I think it would be good to have the committee vote, do a straw poll tonight to say that that's what we want to do so that we can
Absolutely.
start that work.
Okay, and if people are done commenting, why don't we take a straw poll of all who would be in favor on this committee to move forward with this home rule petition, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So I think that's everybody on the call. Did you get all that, Jacqueline? I feel bad that I did a voice vote because I'm not sure if we got everybody.
Yes, I got all of that.
Excellent. Okay, so I need a motion to hold this item.
I move to hold.
Excellent. All in favor of hold, say aye.
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 Abstentions, I mean nays, abstentions. Okay, so we have a straw poll affirmative of this item, and then we've got a motion to hold it. So then can we ask Counselor Norton as a lead docketer to work on next steps in terms of working with the law department on language? Excellent. And I just want to thank you. It's interesting. The last couple presentations we've had, like these nights have been very informative. So I really appreciate Ms. Kiesel for coming tonight and sharing with us the work that she's done, and also as well as the experiences she's had in Arlington. It's been incredibly helpful.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned, the next two items I'm going to ask for a hold because we don't have time to get into the nitty gritty of trees. I did, in preparing for the meeting tonight, work with some of the folks that we have 5 outstanding items to cover with trees. And I've spoke with Counselor Krinsman about that as well, that we are in the home stretch. But I would like to start that work earlier in the evening. So if I can get a motion to hold item number 411-22 and item number 412-22.
So moved.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all your assistance as we got through this tonight. I have a great night.
All
Thanks.
right.